Steffi. I'm definitely envious that you're enjoying the carnival life right now, and I'm not. Like just hearing you tell me the tea of the village, I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
I hate you a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. How has it been going home?
It's been great. I like that I've come at this period, of course. So it's been really a good acclimatation and getting used to the place. Well, getting used to the place as a resident, let's say.
I feel it. I mean, as a lover of culture and history, I feel like carnival is like such a huge cultural like it's just like a huge cultural like moment for us that does I feel like so much for the community on like so many different levels, from just like not only the display of like tradition and like what is our sound and like what is our connections to Christianity, but even just like this like opportunity for people to kind of be reckless, and kind of just like be a little more mischievous. And I feel like it's just kind of like letting people be themselves in this like
Mhm.
almost like Mardi Gras esque, like you can't see me, like this is just me in Carnival. Like, who is this? This isn't me. No, no, guys, let's not film nothing. Okay, what happened in
Yeah,
Carnival?
it's
Stay in
really
Carnival.
like the context of the mask that you put on, that you can put on during Carnival and become
Yeah,
who you wish to be, even though we don't really put on physical masks anymore, I feel like, but still you have this concept of alternate personality during this time. So that's fun. And also like I
yeah,
really like all social sciences, not only history but also sociology, etc. So being able to observe this community, this San Martin community at this particular time, also seeing who is partying, who is working, all of that is very interesting. Because
yeah. Like
not
there's so many
everyone gets
layers
to
to it.
enjoy carnival, you know?
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
Like I know my dad for one, like he would just be like, "No, we're open. Like we got money to make, things
Yeah.
to sell, And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Dad, let's go to the parade." He's like, "I'm good, bro. I'm good." But I feel like I don't know, like having not have carnival for like so many years, and like for my birthday happens to fall in like carnival break. So for me, it was just like I felt like the whole country was partying on my birthday. It was great. It was just like, yes, guys, let's go off. But now like when I'm in the States and people don't really have like they don't really have a concept of carnival, in
Mm.
most states, unless it's like Florida is an exception. Um, or New York. And it's just like interesting. I feel like there's like a part of me missing, like just the
Mm.
sounds of like your culture,
Yeah.
and like the foods and the flavors. Like for me, these are all things that I gravely took for granted. And now that I don't have it, I'm just like, oh my God, like how do we distribute this to the world so I can just get this everywhere?
Mm.
Like I feel like everybody needs to get a taste of like what St. Martin is like during Carnival, because
Yeah.
there's just so many great things that happen culturally
Mm.
that I feel like, are we even aware of the magic?
Yeah, and each place has a very specific version of carnival, and so when you get to these bigger countries, the larger communities get to decide what is the version of carnival that is being imported, and so even when you see like the Miami Carnival or the Labor Day Parade in New York or the Toronto Carnival, it's not gonna be like
Mm.
small island music. It's not gonna be the same music that they play. They don't play a Penta vibes from Anguilla. They don't play control band. They don't play light. They don't play our music. They will play Michelle Montano. Like wow, okay. They will play
Yeah, the
Destra.
mainstream artists.
So yeah, I enjoy it, but it's just a different feeling. Notting Hill, they would rather go ahead and play how do you call this? UK garage music. So like it's a type of
Mm.
electronic music that was created in London by minorities, but like it doesn't sound Caribbean. So it's their version of carnival, and I respect that because each carnival is specific to the place where it is, but still you have like Kititians who live in London. You have small St. Lucians, of course, and more smaller island people who live there. And I am coming from St. Martin expecting to hear the kind of music that I hear like in Anguilla or home, and then
Exactly. It's like, "What's
it doesn't
this? What
exist, you
what
know.
is this? What is"
Like
and it's like
they would play Burna Boy much more than they play any like small soca artists. It's like,
that's
okay, that's
crazy.
your
I mean,
version, but
I'm a fan of the
yeah,
Afro beats, but it's got its
of
place,
course,
okay? Like, this is not what Carnival is
yeah.
for, but I feel like as being part of the diaspora, one of the things that I hope technology can do for our Carnival is really, like, broadcast those artists to a wider
Mm.
audience. So, like, if I wanted to go on Spotify and listen to Control Band, like, I could get them hits and play that shit on repeat, you know? But, like, I feel like when you're abroad, like, you really have to just watch the live stream and just, like, pretend you're there in spirit.
And like the radio still has such a major role in broadcasting the carnival
Exactly.
music, you know, because I feel like in Saint Martin, if you're not here and you're not tuned into the radios, you don't know what people like, what local music people listen here, and even you have to be like in the carnival moments. Yesterday there was the opening of the carnival village, and so there was the opening jump up, and there's a song that played many times, and I'm almost sure that it has not been really played on the radio as yet, but the band that was like on the truck was playing it again and again. I'm supposing that it's their song, but yeah, like now the song is stuck in my head because I was there in the moment. So there's something very like exclusive about having access to San Martin music. So yeah, it makes you feel like you're part of some special club.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like, I don't know, there isn't so many opportunities where that exists anymore, where there is that sort of exclusive oh my god, I can't even speak. Exclusivity, but it's like tied to quality and like authenticity and uniqueness. And it's just like, for me, it's like so hard to explain to people how magical that is if you don't have that experience. Like, if you're not there to witness this just display of like humanity, like, it's just absolutely
Mm,
incredible. And even still, like, the Dutch side's carnival is different than the French side's carnival, and it's like a
yeah,
completely different, even um display of music and like
yeah.
costume making. And I'm curious for you, like, how do you look at Carnival growing up from the French side? Because I feel like growing up on the Dutch side, for me, like, the Dutch side Carnival was always like that shit, you know? Like, it was like the party that you really want to be a part of. Whereas the French side one was a little bit more low key, but I don't know if that's just because I lived in the South, you know, and like that's just like our bubble, you know, like our bubble.
Mhm. So for I remember that as a teen, going to the Dutch side in general was always a vibe because like we would go with friends, take the bus, ride to Philipsburg, and like go shopping and these things. So it was always like something to go like on the Dutch side with your friends. And when we did get to experience carnival as a group of friends and not with the parents, it was all the more fun, you know, because it was this experience that we were getting and we were feeling free and everything. But like French Side Carnival, we really participated in it, you know. We attended Dutch Side
Mm.
Carnival as like viewers. But French Side Carnival, it was our thing. Like we got to really make it, enjoy it, because when you are part of schools, then you participate in the children parade from small, and so you get used to it. You get to enjoy it. You know the routes. You know where you should be placed. Even the public, they like people. I don't know if people still do that, but they used to like couples used to have like their matching outfits and everything, and like groups of friends who attended also had their little looks, and you had to look good even though you were not like part of the troops. Like even
I feel that, I
as
feel
just
that.
one. Yeah, you still have, it was still a big moment definitely for us. And yeah, I the first time I was on the road for carnival was on the French side, and it was as a child. It was as a young child, maybe at 5 years old, and then a few times again growing up, and even as a teen. So I would say that for me, French side carnival, I really see it as as something in which I participate, not something that I attend. I really
That's
see
so
it
interesting.
as yeah, like something that I can make my own for real. Also because the costumes were much more cheap than on the Dutch side, so it doesn't put that huge distance and that huge sense of industrialization of the event. And the troops would could
Mm.
be like associations, not necessarily specialized in carnival. But for instance, I remember that the hospital, on the French side, they had an association for the employees, that's it, and they decided to do a troop for carnival, and that was open to everyone. And
So
so
cute. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's so
it's not
cute.
that there are some troops that are specialized, in carnivals, but they represent a neighborhood. There are some troops that are specific or that are from, let's say, Grand Cas or from Concordia. It doesn't mean that you cannot attend if you wish, but that's just where they're going to have their trainings, and that's where most of the people are going to come from. So that's also very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Just thinking about the roles that different people play in an event like Carnival, or like the viewer versus participant is such an interesting one. Because yeah, I feel like we're all like sharing in each other's energy, whether it is the people that are like actually in the streets grinding and whining and just like creating all of the fun, or the people that are literally cheering them on, as on the side,
Yeah.
giving them that like hype, like this is your moment. You better,
Mm.
walk in that costume that you paid, a pretty penny for. You
Yeah.
better work it. Work
Yeah.
it.
There's a sense of familiarity with the French side carnival. French side carnival is like
Yes, yes.
family, it's like your people, and to me, the side carnival is a show. So that's the difference for me.
Yes. Yes. That is accurate. Accurate. I guess like I'm curious, like what got you so in love with St. Martin's culture and history? I mean, it is a given. I feel like obviously we both recognize that St. Martin's culture is like a gem that's like really, I think, priceless. But was there like just experiences that got you really seeing, I guess, the value of being an advocate for our culture and history? Because I think sometimes like there's just not enough, like we don't fight for it enough. And I feel like it should be fought for because it is like such a priceless thing.
Yeah. Definitely. So my mother is from Guadeloupe, and I don't know if you've been around French Caribbean people, but they are very proud of their culture. So even though she's always lived in Saint Martin, like since my older brother's birth and her wedding, etc., the household is very much immersed in in Guadeloupean culture, like because she's the one who cooks, so she cooks Guadeloupean food, and the radio is tuned in on the Guadeloupe radio station and things like that. So I've seen how a culture can be important to someone and the ways in which you can showcase it. My dad is from Saint Martin, and he's very into culture, let's say, but more into history. And I've seen him look into our tree, our how do you call that? Our genealogical tree. And
Yeah, your
I've
ancestry.
Yes, our family tree. I've seen him build it, say, okay, this one was related to this one, and this one married this one. And so, this sense of close history, of personal history. And so, of course, given our history, when you look into your family tree, you find historical elements, and you find also a stop somewhere where you cannot continue going to the roots. And so it was interesting to see how me as a person, I was linked to this bigger history and how personal it was for me. I was also a very good. Well, I was a very good student, and I particularly enjoyed history. I did enjoy history in school, even though I didn't feel like it related to me. You know, so it was like I did have some teachers who tried to give some well, in the French curricula you have some hours that are dedicated to regional history, And so we had
Okay,
a
okay.
book about the French Caribbean, but there were two instances where they talked about Saint Martin, one in in history, one in geography. The one in history was to mention an abolitionist that is called a Périnon, and who did stuff on the French side, who lived on the French side and carried experiments to prove that yes, if you pay people and not beat them, they will still work. And then you have yes, and then you have
Tragic.
yeah, and then on the geography pages, you had the Juliana airport. That was the only mention of Saint Martin in our French Caribbean booklet, because it was like 100 pages of history. And then you had like the bigger books, two books, one for history, one for geography, for like the program, the general curriculum. And so I did enjoy history, even though it was not really geared towards my environment. And we
Mm.
and with my parents, we did attend like all the cultural events that existed. So it could be like I love my ram in Colombia. It could be Fish Day. It could be anything that was done around the abolition of slavery. And one thing that really influenced me as a teen is that I have a very good friend, Samia, who had this idea when we were at the last level of junior high to do a Black History Month project. And Black history being
Mm.
something American, it's non-existent in the French context. So usually the time around which slavery, let's say, is discussed on the French side is around May, because that's the month of the abolitions of slavery. But she decided to do a Black History Month project, and so we got to do songs and theater pieces and dances celebrating Black cultures and also Saint Martin culture. So we got to discuss with the organization of Shuja Rev. So it was either Conscious Lyrics Foundation, or it was maybe the book fair organization, who told us about Saint Martin, who showed us the movie Amistad. Um, and we also got to learn to dance panam and things like that. So it was interesting to see this part of history that I hadn't learned in the classroom, but it was still for a school project. So it still had this legitimacy of school, you know.
Mm.
And I definitely understood at this moment, because I was like 14 maybe, that there was so much that I didn't know about home, or not. It was not really in this sense, but it was more in the sense of, whoa, there is so much things to learn, you know. I didn't feel the lack. I just felt like the curiosity could be geared towards these interests. But I really, really felt a lack when I did go to France, because I went to a school that specializes in, well, it doesn't specialize. That's the point of the school. But basically, you do social sciences, micro and macro economy. You do law. You do a variety of humanities, let's say, during your two first years, and then you have a year abroad. And during these two first years, they would teach you these history classes on the 19th century. And the 19th century is not a very 19th, yes, is not a very interesting century. Well, the end, they teach you the end of the 19th century, so that's well after the French the revolution, that is in the 18th century. Um, it's it's not these big things that you see
Mm.
in global history of France, but it prepares the 20th century. And so you get this knowledge that is very particular, you know, that is, it's not huge facts. It's like you get in the nitty gritty of a time where nothing big happens, it seems like, when you're not aware of it. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I get to know all these small things about France, and like I don't know any big steps of my home, you know. And so it felt like, yeah, I was getting to know too much about someone else, story compared to what I knew about mine. And so when I could, I would read certain things, but I really got the chance to have time to look into St. Martin history during COVID because I already had the books. Oh yeah, something important that I attended when I was in St. Martin was the book fair. Because the annual book fair of St. Martin is an occasion where local and regional authors come and showcase their writings, but you also have conferences on local topics, let's say. And my dad had a lot, still has, and I still seal his books. He has so many books about St. Martin. So I was in an environment that was where I could access some information, and I had already read some of it. I had already traveled, well, taken some of my dad's book to go with him in France, in the hopes of having time to sometimes read it. And eventually, when COVID came around, I had time to do it. And so I started with a book from Daniela Jeffrey that is called St. Martin Destabilization of something. I can't remember right now, and I don't have it right in front of me. But it's a book that talks about modern day St. Martin. And I noticed that while I was reading it, the notes that I was taking was about dates. I was like, okay, I was basically making a chronology, a timeline. Okay, this at this time, this is what happened. At this year, this is what happened. This day, that is what happened. And so I ended up the book with like a bunch of dates, and I was like, hey, this is actually interesting to see it like this because it puts things into perspective. You understand what is the path that events followed. And so that's why I was like, oh well, I have this conviction that we don't know enough about St. Martin history, and it's a easy take for me to just share online these dates. So let me just create an Instagram page and go ahead and share these dates. And yeah, that's why I started on this day SXM.
Can I tell you something? It's funny. I actually, from your Instagram page, like now, so every year I make my own agenda for myself because I'm a nerd and I like design. Okay. And one of the things that I was really missing home, and I was like, I really need a way to celebrate, same like dates that are important to my identity and my culture. And a lot of the dates that I have in my agenda now, even around like celebrating when slavery was abolished for us, is because of your Instagram page. So just saying, sis, you're out here educating the rest of us, that clearly don't know shit, because I agree. There is definitely not enough about our history and
Yeah.
culture. Like, I didn't learn anything, I don't think, when I was at LU that was really about like St. Martin history ever. And I agree. I feel like a lot of the times, like these colonial nations, they do a very good job of like almost erasing, the history of the colonies that they once conquered, and not really putting a lot of emphasis into what was the experiences of the people there, what was the hardships that they were going through, what was the reality of that time, and how has that influenced um the generations that have followed. And for me, it's just kind of like a lack of like respect for the people there to be able to have these stories and to like share them with like future generations to help really solidify like what it means to be a part of our community, and like you were saying, giving us perspective on like what we have been through. I think like
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes. Like, I thought it was so great that your dad did the family tree, because for me, like, I have a lot of question marks of like, okay, yeah, I know my mom's side of the family is from St. Kitts, and like they have their origins there, but how exactly did they get there? St. Kitts happens to be like one of the first stops in the Atlantic slave trade when they were shipping slaves over from West Africa. And so for me, it's just
Yeah.
like these are types of questions that minorities unfortunately never get the answers to, because a lot of those documents were never taken, never
Mm.
felt needed to be stored. And then we're left with like a lot of question marks where like you see these ads for like ancestry.com and they're like, I'm related to Thomas Jefferson. And I'm like, must be nice. You know, it must be nice. Must be nice to have that documentation. Oh, did your ancestors log their entry in Ellis Island? Must have been nice because they went on that
Mm.
boat voluntarily.
Yep.
Oh, and for me, it's like it hurts, I think, sometimes to not be able to have those connections to your roots and to really
Hmm.
know with certainty like what your
Yep.
ancestors have been through and sort of like what is the torch that we carry going forward. And so for me, when I meet people that really have this love and conviction for our history and culture, like for me, like you're like secret superheroes for all of us because you're fighting for our stories. And I feel like it's something that you can't put a price tag on, but it is so key to who we are and how we think of ourselves and how we feel
Hmm.
empowered that, I sometimes totally understand why St. Martiners struggle with this whole identity crisis of like, what does it mean to be a St. Martiner? Who is a St. Martiner? What is a St. Martiner? Because we have so many questions that we don't even have
Hmm.
the answers to.
Yeah. And I'm in my daily life, I'm quite optimistic, but at the end of the day, I'm also quite a fatalist because of the pending environmental apocalypse. And so, because we're
Oh
from such a
Lord, I
small
feel you.
space, yeah, because we from like my fatalism makes me think that we must do everything now. We don't have time, so we must act, and we must act now.
With
That's also why
urgency,
when yeah, yeah, and that's also why when I see that there's something uh that I don't like, or something about society that I think should could be better or could be changed. I usually I'm not someone who stays long in the face of this is not how things should be done. I don't like how this is done. I don't really long in this vibe. I do have the capacity to quickly say, what can I do at my level? Okay, it might not change everything, but what can I do? So that's why I tend to do like small stuff. That's why I tend to do a variety of things, because I tend to notice what what's not working, and then I ask myself, okay, but am I
yeah,
able at my level to do anything? Or but I tend to not voice my complaints extensively, unless it's because I think that my complaints will generate change. But I try not to stay too long in the complaintive state, even though I do
yeah,
believe that angry is a transformative feeling, a transformative force. Uh, Anyways, I was trying to say that because of the environmental apocalypse that is going to take place, I feel like we must ask ourselves, what do we want the world or aliens of or what who comes after to remember about who we are. And I don't want
exactly.
aliens to know that Steffi was a multimillionaire. I don't care about that. I want them to know that Saint Martin was an island with people who spoke a certain way, and who came from certain places, and who thought this way, and who created this thing. And yeah, that's for me, that's the real questions. What are we going to leave? Okay, you can leave
Yeah,
houses, but these houses are gonna be buried underwater. So what are the ideas that you are
the
leaving to
modern day
influence the worlds to come?
Atlantis.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I
To
feel
me,
that. I think
the real battle is about ideas. And
yes.
so that's why I'm so adamant about trying to find ways to express mine, or highlight the ideas that were expressed
Yes.
precedently.
Yes. It's beautiful. I think it's so great to see that you're fighting for our legacy. That
Mm.
we're in the same tribe. Or oh my gosh, like I'm here for it. Here for it because I think about that so much, Steffi. Like I used to think honestly that I was the only one that was freaking crazy and could see the freaking like meteor that's like headed straight towards us, and everybody else in the island's just like la di da di da. Life is good, like c'est la vie. Let's just, drink some tea punch and chill at the beach. What you're stressed
Yeah.
for? And I'm like, guys, like environmental collapse is looking us
Yeah.
dead in the face. Like
Hmm.
Hurricane Irma was no joke. And even just from like a historical and cultural preservation perspective, like the government building had like what, like tons of archives that were simply just lost or destroyed or damaged because of Hurricane Irma. And these are documents that like hold our culture and identity. They let us know what exactly occurred so that we can think for ourselves critically and not believe somebody else's story about what our experiences were. And for me, like that is so important. And I think about like really and truly in the event St. Martin goes underwater, and like no longer exists because of rising sea levels. What are people going to remember about us? What am I going to tell my grandchildren about the country that made me who I am if I can't take them there? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of this is just like, even as a part of the diaspora, like it's so hard to point to St. Martin's culture and be like, this is who I am. This exactly represents what I feel and how I identify myself. And for me, it's like when we create content or like you do all of these projects, for me they're like adding one droplet to like the pool of like this is St. Martin culture. And I think like a lot of
Yeah.
the other developed nations have done a fantastic job at just like pushing their culture externally, that you have a very clear idea of what Italian food is, of what American
Mm.
cuisine is, of what Dutch, French food. You know just from that, okay, this is what to expect. But when you think about St. Martin, it's kind of like a let's just, pick some of what is generally Caribbean and say that this is St. Martin. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, but no. It's like, and this is where it's like, I think it's so important to see people that are fighting and creating content and trying a bunch of things and just like having fun with it. Because to me, all of it represents our legacy. Like every one of us has a job to push our legacy out into the world, not just for us, but really for just like what it means to
Mm.
be a St. Martiner, like what it means to have this community and this connection. So when the aliens are, scrolling through the servers of the destroyed internet or whatever occurs, who knows, that there is something that they could look onto and be like, these people here, there's something special about them. What is this? Like I like how they think. Like I like how they challenge things. I like how they express themselves. This is a freedom. This is a vibration that I am messing with. But if we
Yeah.
don't fight for that voice, if we just
Mm.
like continue to pretend like, yeah, we're on our island and it's a nice little bubble, it's safe, it's cozy, and like I don't care what's going on in the rest of the world,
Mm.
that's not going to protect us from what's going on in
Yeah.
the rest of the world. And yeah, I really admire all the things that you're doing, and like you were mentioning about the audio project, not a
Mm.
podcast, the audio project. I think like that is so great to be able to just like archive and catalog the stories of
And
our
the way we
older
speak.
generation. Oh, the way we speak. I feel like
Mm.
I'm like the worst example of how St. Martiners speak. Like, do not hear my voice and think like I'm anything like the people. But when I hear a real St. Martin accent, my heart, everything in my
Yeah.
like, I can't not smile. Like, it's just so
Yeah.
freaking great. Oh,
Yep.
the way we speak,
Mm.
beautiful.
And so the audio project is called Back Then. Let me actually look it up because it's not just called Back Then. I think it's Back Then, and
No
the
worries.
title is Stories of Saint Martin of Yesterday. And so it's available on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all this stuff. And it's basically yes, back then, stories of the Saint Martin of yesterday. And what I did is that 2 or 3 years ago, I bought a recorder, and I was like, I need to record people of my family because there is a talent in the way we speak, in the way we tell stories. We don't just
Beautiful.
say, okay, A happened to C. No, we have a whole way of, but me tell you about that. but I remember, and the whole storytelling vibe is just so precious. And I was like, I need this to be recorded. And so I went ahead and asked like my dad and his brother, my two aunts, friends, the mothers and aunts of my friends, and everything. I chose couples of brothers and of siblings, because I was like, I do not want my voice as the interviewer to be heard. That's also why I don't call it a podcast, because I'm not supposed to be present. I wanted to feel like the listener is a little mouse hearing a conversation between two people. And so I went ahead and asked these siblings, can you tell me about your childhood, about your education, about religion while growing up, about what you used to eat? Did you leave St. Martin, to where, how it was? And yeah, it's an occasion to both hear about the stories of the past, but also hear how people of a certain generation speak our language. And I swear to God, when I get back to them and listen these audios, I laugh so much, because, as I was saying, our way of
I
speaking
bet.
is so interesting and so fun, and that's really also how to say, an illustration of what I want to highlight when I talk about history. To me, what is important is not, and also in life, like my philosophy of life, like, to me, there is power in who we are, in the be, and not just in the do. Because there's also that we're in a
Mhm.
society where there's this whole emphasis on doing, on producing, on performing, on being active. But to me, simply being is also very powerful and valuable, and the most important things. To me, you don't have to do extraordinary things to be recognized as
Extraordinary,
powerful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I had this
exactly.
whole this whole comment back and forth with with someone, because I worked with Le Pélican, which is a local newspaper, to make an article for International Women's Day. And I didn't want to do the thing of like extraordinary women who did great things, and talking about one Tete Loke who was so strong and powerful, and thinking about women in politics, and because that's a very how to say, hegemonic, it's basically white feminism, the fact to say that, look how these women can act as men, look how strong they are, look how powerful, like, these things that are valued usually when we talk about these women that we admire, is their ability to be strong, and to basically be at the same level as men. But to me, like, it's not like men were such a great thing that we have to be at their level. Like, I don't see it
So
that
have you met a
way.
man? Like, have you actually met one? Like, cause I don't know. I'm like, that's not the bar I'm looking to measure myself against. Yeah.
Like, of course, it's good to be powerful, but it's also good to be other stuff. There is strength is not the only thing that is good, basically. And
And even
so I
I
went
just don't get
ahead.
why like our definition of power is like based on male
Yeah,
achievements. Like women
yeah,
give
yeah,
birth. Like, are you
yeah.
kidding me? Like that is
Mhm.
incredibly powerful.
Yeah. So what I did is that I spoke about women in different times of St. Martin. So I talked about the roles that Native women had in pottery making and things like that survive until today. I talked about how women were made to be producers of slaves, because the master just didn't want them to be mothers, but just to be future slaves. I talked about how religion has shaped what is seen as a good woman or not. I talked about dancehall queens in Saint Martin. I talked about, like, yes, women in general in Saint Martin, and not. I of course I mentioned a few people, because you always have to, like, say, okay, this is an example of what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
my objective was not to do like a pantheon of women of Saint Martin. And so there was this one commenter who was like, oh, this article is not like, is not, how to say, is not really highlighting how Saint Martin women, how great are Saint Martin women. And I was like, but I'm not trying to say that we're great. I'm trying to say that we are, and that's it. We are, and and that should be enough. That is
Some
who we
people
were
don't
at
see
this
that.
time. This is something else that we were at this time. And yeah, this is the role that we had in society.
I love that perspective because it's so different and it's exactly not what people would expect, which is I think
Mhm.
why they were so triggered to be like, excuse me, I don't think you understood the assignment, miss. And you're like, actually, I don't think you understood the assignment, reader.
Yeah,
Okay.
she didn't get the vision.
She was not getting it.
And
And
I
that's
was like,
okay.
are you saying that we can only celebrate women when they achieve great things? And they were like, what's the point in celebrating women that don't do shit? And I was like, the article literally starts with women doing something very basic at their time, pottery, but that survives and informs us hundreds of years later on their society. So yes, there is extreme power in doing everyday stuff. And I feel like when people get to admire other people for just doing them, they can also like gain more confidence and chill a bit about their expectations for themselves. Just be more gentle with
Read.
themselves and everyone. Like, I'm also
I
very, of course, I'm,
know. Oh my
because of all
gosh.
I do, of course I have a certain level of exigence, and like, yeah, but also, like, let's relax. Let's be.
I feel it. I feel it. And that's such a great point because I think we often don't value the everyday. We take it for
Yeah.
granted. Like, oh, yeah, I fold my laundry. So what? Well, it's like, everything that we do adds to the condition of the moment. You know what I mean? And like to say that like those women weren't doing great things when they were farmers and just taking care of their family and like, raising poultry that they were putting on the table that night, all of that led for us to even be here now. So how can you
Yes.
even like even for you to be able
Downplay
to
this.
accomplish anything
Yeah.
in your life, they had to go through everything that they did just to give you the opportunity and to be like, oh, well, that's not enough. She didn't work hard enough. My great grandma, what was she
Mm.
doing? A slacker. That woman, a slacking. You know what I mean? Just trying to feed the family. Oh my gosh, what was she thinking? Lazy. Oh no, but I think
And
like it just robs
it also
us.
falls into my not disgust, but my preference to not highlight heroes. I know that people like to identify key people that they can look up to,
Yeah.
and I understand the purpose and the
Yeah.
utility of heroes. But to me, there's no such thing as a self-made person. To me, a hero is the result of how a community has created something great, and we get to see it into one person. But the whole, like, community that stands behind heroes, I think that is what we should put our focus on. Like, when you read about Toussaint Louverture, and you understand by who he was raised, by a woman who was very strong and powerful, and I believe she was a fighter herself and things like that. You understand that, yeah, he okay, we remember the person, but he was made of his because of his environment. And to me, it's really important that we put the focus on community, and how working together helps us to, well, is the key to achieving important stuff. Not
Hmm.
in The key is not to be a great
Yeah.
person. The key is to allow your strengths to create something great,
Yeah.
collectively.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic because I think like it's like goes back to the roles that we play, you know, in our society. Like I think like and like the narratives that they support, you know, because the whole hero versus villain one is one that I have been contemplating for a while, and I feel like it's interesting because when we have stories about like what we celebrate as heroes and what are things that we look as like just expected or like not that great or worthy, it shows us like how we view ourselves and like what are the parts of ourselves that we shame versus what are the
Mm,
parts of ourselves that we celebrate. And like for me, I realized that there were things that I shamed about myself that I was just like, oh, I was not having reverence or appreciation for because I had convinced myself that they weren't important or like
mm,
they didn't deserve to be celebrated. And
yeah.
I was robbing myself of joy, robbing myself of pleasure, of happiness, of contentment, of gratitude, just because there was this like indoctrination of like celebrating individuality, celebrating accomplishments, celebrating big ticket things that I think like not to say that they don't deserve to be celebrated, but to acknowledge that there was a journey that it took to get you there and the journey is equally as important. The people that
Mm,
help you are equally as important and worthy to be recognized in your
yeah.
accomplishments. And I think yeah, it's just like I think growing up in a like minority community, we have the advantage of like having the opportunity to experience community and like what it
Mm,
actually means to be part of a collective. Because I've noticed and I'm curious for you how it was in France, where like it's much more individualistic in the way that those communities operate and how they view what is important and what is celebrated. But when you come from a place that is more rooted in like community and the collective, there is this interesting just like awareness you have that I think like allows us to just connect more with people as
mm,
opposed to people that are only operating from this individualism perspective of like me, it's all about me, my accomplishments, my shit, get out of my way. You know?
mm, yep. No, but France was definitely an experience, a good one actually. It's just that it lasted too long, but it was a good experience. Also, I lived in Paris, and Paris is a big city that acts as a big city. So yes, the sense of individuality and anonymity is very very strong, you know, and you definitely have to build some walls to change how you perceive the other if you want to be able to thrive or just live in this city, because the first years or the first months, depending on your quickness of adaptation, you're going to feel bad each time that you see a homeless person. But you see homeless persons, people like all day long, you know. And so eventually you build some walls to, yeah, to see them less or to be less affected by,
Desensitize,
yeah,
yeah.
to desensitize yourself from this stuff. And it's, yeah, it creates cognitive dissonances because you're supposed to act as if something that morally and intimately you find outrageous, and not act on it when you see it daily. So yeah, it creates a separation of your of your consciousness, I feel. And you force yourself to negate other people's humanity, and to not care as much. And it makes sense that cities are so impersonal, because by celebrating such level of individuality, you break the connections between human beings, and of course you also break the connection with the natural, well, the rest of the natural realm, you know. So you have these breaks, you don't have trees, and so you're yourself as a human, you're not part of a living collective of humans, and you're not part of a living collectives of beings in general. So it's really I don't know. It's a mechanization of the human of humanity in some sort of way, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I love
particular.
talking to you. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this conversation is just so good. Like I'm just like, soul tribes, man, soul tribes. But I'm curious, like for people that kind of like me, and I feel like are out of touch. I still think with like having a true depth and richness to really understanding like St. Martin culture, and history, or even just like the influence of like immigration throughout the region, and like how from island to island we have this deep rooted brotherhood and sisterhood that I think is a neglected relationship. Um,
Mhm.
how people can sort of like yeah like learn more about it, expand their awareness of the stories that make them who they are, so they
Mhm.
can have greater empathy for others in the community right now, as well as those that seek to be a part of our community.
If these people live in San Martin, I would say that the first step is to get involved in communities and associations. Because the past is one thing, but to me, the past is a way to understand the present, you know. And another way to understand the present is to be involved in the present. So find a cause, find something that you want to join. I think that's the first way to get a better knowledge of where you are and who you are, because it's when you're confronted to the other that you understand more of who you are. So I would say this as a first. Then you can turn to and you also have events and things about our culture, so participate in those. uh, because I find that the attendance is always too low compared to what it is, you know. Then online, you also have many resources. Still on the present time, I would really encourage people, well, to listen to the other episodes of your podcast, because the variety of people that you've interviewed shows who we are as a people currently. So that's very interesting to hear different stories and not focus only on who we are as ourselves. Also to listen to the interviews that Ralph Contab has published on his YouTube page, because there he has not only he has people from many generations, and from many walks of life, and so you can see yeah, once again what Saint Martin is made of, more or less. And then if you want to go in the past, uh, simple Google searches help, but of course you have other resources such as uh, include advertisement. On this day SXM on Instagram, on this day in St. Martin on Facebook. You have the Mele podcast as well. You have resources such as the one of the Museum of St. Martin, to be honest, and once you start looking, you're gonna find, because you're just gonna jump from page to page. And then to me, the best space on internet on the Caribbean right now is New York Caribbean Instagram page, because she does a phenomenal job in highlighting our stories in a, I would say, decolonized perspective, and valuing things that we tend to look badly upon. Yeah, I don't know if it was your
Beautiful.
question, but
But then
and
also,
then
like, you have the service that you do around culture and history too. Is that something where people can like directly talk with you about it, or is it more of like you are helping businesses get more in touch with the cultural and historical side of
mm.
St. Martin?
Okay, so besides my presence on social media, I do have, let's say, an agency on culture and history, more history, but the aim is to bring about projects, whether it's events, books, anything, written content about our history, just finding different ways to highlight it. For now, I've worked with businesses and also with institutions, and I hope to be able to produce much more projects now that I'm on the island. I have a lot of ideas, but I need to choose how I allocate my time very wisely, as time is of the essence. But yeah, I cannot wait to have more opportunities to highlight St. Martin's history in different ways.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see it because yeah, I mean, the impact that you've been having already, I think in the community is tremendous and it's something that's so needed with urgency. And yeah, I just look forward to learning honestly from you around like this area because it's so important to who we are, how we operate, what are our values and just like what makes us just so like I feel like in touch and in tune with like what our purpose is, on this world, in this world. And yeah, it's just like so phenomenal to get to have like heard these stories from you and be able to like listen into these conversations and to deepen our connection with each other because honestly, like I say it with like full chest, the same Martin people are just some of the best people to meet in this world. Like they're just so colorful, so interesting, so dynamic, so much fun. And you never know what you're gonna get.
Yep.
And I don't know, like it's just like an absolute blessing to see how our history has shaped us to be kind of this like rebellious, raw mishmash of like energies that really comes
Mm.
forward with like this just like deep reverence of like connection to the earth, connection to each other, just being who we are and having fun with it. And I think
Yep.
sometimes like modernization has sort of blinded us to these like collective truths of who we are that I think it's like so important for us to really like remind people of like what our ancestors were all about so they don't get caught up trying to be somebody else.
Yep. That's why I think it's important also to start with our own personal history, knowing if we can, trying to go as far back with our family tree. What maybe what your grandmother used to wear, what were her habits, and things like that. And then, and that's also because I think that there is a lot of beauty in being specific about what you are interested in, because you've spoken about how in the United States Caribbean culture is actually like Jamaican and Trinidadian culture, and then they put it as an umbrella
Pretty
for all the
much.
Caribbean. And the same things happen for the French Caribbean, because the French Caribbean, they have their language that is a French based Creole. And so when I was in France and I said that I was from Saint Martin, I'm from the French Antilles, they would speak to me in Creole, and I'm like, my mom is from Guadeloupe, so I speak Creole. There's no issue. But if I tell you that I'm from Saint Martin, that's not what you should go to. That's not the default. You should assume that I speak. And so to me, it's important to be wary of these umbrellas that we put above cultures, because it suppresses the specificities of each culture. Like if someone wants to do the history of Grand Cas, they should. If they want to do the history of Shantytown in Grand Cas, they should. If they want to do the history of Front Street or top of Front Street, they should, because each of these places has specific stories to tell. And I just think it's a pity when we just uh, think that because it's a small place, it's not important, and we're gonna go higher up to find something relevant. Where no, the what is important is in the small stories first, and then you can go up to see how it relates to other stories.
So beautiful. Well, it was an absolute pleasure. And I know there's so much we're going to talk about. So I'm really so happy to have had you on the podcast today and to get to like just chat a little bit about our culture and history because it's such a huge topic with so much nuance and flavor. Um, that yeah, it was absolutely my pleasure.
Same as I told you, I've listened to most of the episodes of the podcast, so it's an honor to be part of the crew that has been on the podcast. Yay!
Gang gang.
Yes.